Hi, my name's Rich. I'm the Foundation Field Geologist here in the Bosnian Valley of the Pyramids, and we're here today filming from the Ravne 3 tunnels. These are a relatively new discovery. We first identified them in the summer of 2018. They're very similar to the Ravne tunnels, which were first discovered by Dr. Sam in 2006. These passages run through the same geological rock unit. Essentially it's a conglomerate, a loosely consolidated gravel bed with clasts of mixed size and composition, and the passages follow horizontal contact boundary with the geological layers below. And at some point in the past, someone has painstakingly blocked these passages up with loose, unconsolidated material. So in order for us to explore these passages, we have to first remove that material. So when we first purchased this plot of land in summer of 2018, we needed to identify where the conglomerate was. So we would sink some probing holes through the soil. Once we hit the conglomerate, we would remove more of the covering soil, and we actually identified several larger cavity spaces. Some of these cavities had cold air blowing out from them, so this gives us an indication that there must be some larger void space that is big enough for cold air to circulate. So these were the locations we would concentrate our excavations on. With the help of an international team of volunteers, we would remove more and more of the soil area, and it wasn't long until we identified our first passages. Now, we started removing the material. We got about 3 metres, not very much, excuse me, and we came across an obstruction. It was a large boulder that had been purposely placed in the middle of the tunnel. It was resting on 2 smaller stones like a plinth, so it had been deliberately put there. And we could see that there was a cavity beyond it that needed excavating, but this was our first archaeological piece of evidence, and we didn't want to remove it, thus destroying it. We wanted to preserve it. Luckily, there was another cavity only 5 metres north that also had cold air blowing out from it, so we reckoned that the first cavity led us to a passageway. This second one would also lead us to a passageway, and sure enough it did. So we had to remove this loose material blocking the passageway, and we did this for about a month, until we came to a section of the tunnels that was completely devoid of any blocking material. So you could tell we would be really excited by this. We were able to move freely at least 55 to 60 metres. There were 2 passages at the end of this section. Unfortunately, there'd been some structural damage to the cavity, and the ceiling had collapsed, blocking these passages. So this is work for the future. But in the cavities, the void spaces, that were clearly shaped by intelligent hands, we had straight running passages, we had large chambers, and within one of the passages we found stalagmites and stalactites. Now these are really useful. We can use them to actually date the age of the cavity. Essentially, a stalagmite is formed from calcium carbonate. When rainwater percolates through this rock, it's dissolving the calcium carbonate within the rock that binds the clasts together. And when that rainwater hits the floor, it precipitates the calcium carbonate, solidifying it. And over time, that calcium carbonate builds up from the floor upwards, creating a stalagmite. And we can actually date this stalagmite using the carbon-14 content locked up within it. And we sent the stalagmite off to Kiev in Ukraine, and they came back with a date of 26,200 years, with a margin of error of 200 years. So this was fantastic. What made it even more fantastic is the fact that when I removed that stalagmite, because of obstructions in the ground, I had to leave the absolute base still there. So there's still about a centimetre's worth of stalagmite that didn't get dated, and that's actually the oldest part of the stalagmite. So with the date of 26,000 years, we can actually estimate that it's probably 30 to 35,000 years old, which is really good because this corroborates with other carbon-14 dates that we have from around the Bosnian Valley of the Pyramids. Now also inside these passages, our field archaeologist Ravne, she's identified several different artefacts. We've had ferrous metallic artefacts and also ceramics. Now we sent the ferrous metallic artefacts off to the local museum, and they came back suggesting that these were Roman in nature. Also the pottery that we found was medieval. So we have passages that were at least 26 to 35,000 years old. We have Roman activity within these passages, we have medieval activity within these passages, and also at some point in the past someone took the time and effort to block these passages up. So behind me is in a southerly direction, and this is the direction towards the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. Whenever we find several passages within the tunnel network, we always choose to excavate the one that's heading south, because we want to head to the Pyramid of the Sun as quickly as possible. Because as we know, pyramids, they're not just the structure on the surface, it's what goes on underneath the surface that's just as important. And we believe that these passages are intrinsically linked with the function of the Bosnian pyramids. So let me give you a tour now of the Ravne 3 tunnel network. Thank you. So I just wanted to give you an example of what we were finding when we first started excavating. Here we're about 30 metres south of our main excavation site at Ravne 3. Now what you see in front of me is a small section of conglomerate outcropping from the soil, and we came across a section similar to this 30 metres north of us, and there was a hollow space with cold air blowing out from it. So this gave us the indication there may be some larger cavities deeper, allowing the air to circulate. And just up there you can see our excavation site entrance at Ravne 3. Here's the valley, and just up this valley side here is the original Ravne tunnels. So the hypothesis we're working on is that obviously at some point in the past the conglomerate beds would have extended across where is now the valley, and so these passages over here may have in fact been connected all the way to the Ravne tunnels, and this section completely destroyed by torrents of water in the distant past, leaving the valley. So I'm now stood at the entrance of the Ravne 3 tunnels. In front of me you can see a floor. We've actually lowered the floor of the original passageway for ease of access. It was quite a cramped space, and to allow visitors and workers into these passages we really needed to lower the floor. So before we go any further, I just want to show you the situation. So above me we have the hard conglomerate. You can see it's well consolidated. Beside me you can see a cross section. So on the top we have, it's kind of a brown colour, I hope the video will pick that up. It's just soil deposit, cave fall, and we have, you know, organic material, roots, pieces of wood, that kind of thing. Material that animals have brought into these passages because they were able to burrow through the small cavity and get in here. So below the soil layer we have the unconsolidated filling material. This is basically a bit of the same: soil, clay, loose pebbles and boulders. You can see there's no order to this, it's completely unconsolidated, it's been thrown in. And then below that you can see we have the natural sedimentary layers, clays, and that's part of the Miocene. So we were emptying this filling material, the soil and the unconsolidated junk, and when we got to about this point here we could see the top of this cavity beyond me, and it looked like it went deeper, so obviously we got really excited. We continued excavating, and around this point here we were able to see into the space. Let me get my torch a second. That there were substantial passages beyond. So over the winter we've fit some electricity and some lights into this section of the tunnel, so let me go back and turn them on, and hopefully you'll be able to see much better on the camera. Okay, we're back with some added lighting. So you might be able to see some bits of dried wood. This is almost certainly material that animals have brought in. You'll also notice the floor is much higher here with the ceiling, so I actually have to crawl through these sections. there is a small passage right here. You can see how small the original passages are. That goes beyond, so that will be a spot to excavate in the summer with the volunteers. On the roof we have stalactites. Here we have some small animal burrows in the soft floor. Now the air quality in here is excellent. I have no problems breathing. It's a stable temperature, about 12 degrees. You might be able to catch my breath in the video. Now throughout this floor we were finding metal artifacts which the local museum has suggested is Roman in nature. Now I just want to point out the shape of this passage. It certainly isn't the kind of passage water would have created. And here we see more stalactites. On the floor we have some stalagmites, and you can see here where we removed one I spoke of earlier, and we sent that off for lab analysis, which they dated. And this passage goes on for another 20 or 30 meters. Let me turn the camera off and get past these stalactites because they are quite delicate and I don't want to risk damaging them. When I get past this obstruction I'll be able to continue filming. Okay, I'm now on the other side of the stalactites and stalagmites. You can see here in front of me what a passage looks like that has been filled up, and we're actually behind the filling material. You can see here the difference between the solid conglomerate wall, which has a more grey colour, and then the loose material, which is just slumping out of the filled passage, is more of a brown material. But it's composed of the same kind of material, it's just unconsolidated. It's been quarried, smashed up, and then put back into the tunnels to fill them up. Now here the ceiling is very low and I have to completely crawl through this section, so it might be difficult for me to film while I'm moving through the passage. What will probably be easier is if I just pause for a second and move a few meters ahead and continue filming. So continuing on, we are now probably about 40 meters from the last place I spoke to you. There you can see more stalactites on the ceiling. In front of me is a collapsed block. So this section of the tunnel has had some damage in the past, and part of the ceiling in a solid block has collapsed. But there is still plenty of room to go beyond that. Now I'm not going to go there today right now as I'm filming on my own, and as there is indications the ceiling is a bit structurally unsound, I won't go any further while I'm here on my own. But I'll just give you a look. This is the way I came. And part of the job this summer for volunteers who are visiting, we will do here what we did earlier on in the passages. We will lower the floor so that we have easier access to continue working and exploring the passages at the end of this section. There are two at a T-junction, and we will need space to remove all the material that's blocking these passages. So we will be requiring volunteers to help us explore these prehistoric and quite mysterious passages. So I've just picked up filming again after I've crawled past the stalagmites we saw earlier. This section's a little bit easier to walk through and film at the same time. So all this section that we've been in now has been revealed with the help of volunteers in summer of 2018. Over the winter, part of the job of the Foundation's permanent workforce, they also came into these passages to extend cavities in a different direction. These passages here are running west, and ideally we want to be heading in this direction, south, towards the Pyramid of the Sun. Here is a good shot of the cross section. So the multicoloured layers that are dipping slightly to the north, that's the natural sedimentation, that's clay there. And then above you can see the soil and the unconsolidated filled material. So that soil layer on top is at least 30 centimetres thick, so that's a considerable amount of material on top of the filling material. So there's quite an age there represented. I'm not a pedologist, so I can't say exactly how many years it would take, but at least a few thousand perhaps. As I say, we found Roman material in here, so it could be dated back to then. It's a picnic area for the working teams on their break time. So again, we have more passages running in a westerly direction. I'm hoping that the westerly heading passages cut right through the hill that we're within, and we find a perpendicular passage running north-south in the core of that hill, connecting all of the east-west passages. So this may be another spot to excavate if the passages earlier don't take us anywhere. Here is another great example of the passage and the filling material that is blocking it. You can just see a tiny little gap between the top of the filling material and the roof of the cave, or passage I should say. You'll notice at this depth inside the tunnel network there is no soil deposition, which can indicate that the soil earlier is natural rather than being placed there as the filling material. Part of the work is to drain the water. There is a lot of water in this region and it does get in the way of working. So we're creating a piping system just to keep the area a little easier to work in. Okay, let's see if I can get some further. Anyway, I hit the record button again by accident. So yeah, this is the extent of the Ravne 3 passages as it stands in April 2019. So far the passages being revealed are very promising. We found artifacts and geological material which has enabled us to date the cavities. The local museum is working with us in partnership, which is a fantastic development, because since the pyramid project has begun, they've kind of kept us at arm's length. But now public opinion is changing, and we're moving into a more positive era of cooperation, which is fantastic. Okay, this is Richard signing off at Ravne 3. I hope you will come and join us in summer of 2019, where we can explore and excavate more of the Ravne tunnel network. Thank you.